coconut cake was one of the most important things about Christmas. It took a long time to make it. It was very important. Everybody liked it better, maybe even than the turkey or the ham. The coconut cake was a necessity. It wasn't easy. We started with a real coconut, just like this one. It's hard and heavy, hard to manage, and Mother usually needed some help with it. So she would have a screwdriver, and you'd have to put that in there and hammer it into the coconut and hammer it in until it made a hole, and then we'd drain the juice out of that coconut. Hold it up and drain the juice into a glass. Then she would take the hammer and just hammer that coconut all to pieces. And we'd have to take it out to a rock sometimes and break it all up into many, many pieces. And it was hard to break up, and then it was very hard to peel because it has a hard crust on it. And we'd have to take a knife and peel all this crust off and have the white meat of the coconut. Then we'd take a grater, like this grater, and we'd have to rub that coconut meat up and down the grater, till our hands would have sores on them here. And we'd take turns. I would grate it a while, my sister would grate a while, Mother would grate a while, till we had a pile of white coconut. And this was so good. Then she would start with the juice of the coconut and sugar and some orange juice and cook that on the stove and make it into a syrup that would go on the cake, which she had already baked in the oven. Then we would take this grated coconut and put it in with the sauce that she made from the sugar and the orange juice and the coconut juice. And we would put this over the coconut cake. And then we'd put the pretty grated coconut on top of that, and it would make it so lovely. Now, I probably wouldn't make a coconut cake if I had to do that today. We don't buy a coconut and start. But we have it so easy. We can get a package of Bird's Eye frozen coconut, and we don't have to grate it, or we don't have to mash up the coconut. It's already there. It's usually frozen. We can get a can of coconut. It's called Coco Lopez, and this has the juice of the coconut in it. You just open it and drain all the juice out, and you have that juice ready to go on the stove and cook it with orange juice and sugar. And the recipe I use calls for sour cream, sugar, frozen coconut, and a little of this coconut Lopez. And it's so easy. You just make a coconut cake, and then you mix the sour cream with the frozen coconut and the sugar, and you put it inside the layers of the cake. Split the layers of the cake open and put them inside it. And then we put coconut over the top. And I use some of the frozen coconut and some of the real coconut. And we have a coconut cake. Then you put it in the coconut cake cover, and you put it in the refrigerator and leave it for 3 days till it's moist through and through. And so I make it on Tuesday, and we're having our Christmas dinner on Friday, and the coconut cake should be just right by Friday without having to burst this big old coconut and grate it on the grater. We can just go to the store and buy these things so easily. We forget what a blessed time we live in. Christmas on the farm was lots of fun. We put a lot into it because we didn't go to the store and buy very much. Most of it was things that we grew right there on the farm. We would go cut the Christmas tree out of the woods every year for a cedar tree. That's what grew on our farm. And so my daddy watched for the cedar tree that would be shaped just right and would have a peak at the top. And when it got to be Christmas time, we would go out and watch Daddy chop that with the axe and bring it in. We didn't have many decorations for our tree when we were up at the old house. We were back in the woods, really. We made chains out of red green paper put together like they did at school and wrapped around the tree with the chains that we made at home. Mother and Daddy popped a lot of popcorn, and we strung it with a needle and thread and made big long chains of popcorn that we also put around the tree. As I remember, we had a star at the top always, but it didn't light up because we didn't have electricity. So it just sat at the top of the tree. And we had a few pretty balls that I still thought it was the prettiest thing we had in the house. Looked at it with wonder because it looked so beautiful sitting there in the house. Now, we went and gathered holly from one little holly tree that we had in the woods, and it had red berries on it. We brought that in to decorate little bits of pine cone. We didn't have many pine trees, but there were a few. And we decorated with what we had. We had some candles, and the candles were special. We lit them at night, sometimes in the house, just to have a sign of Christmas. Mother had a hard time getting up the dinner because she grew the turkey and always grew it thinking of Christmas and what time she'd kill it, and it would be a big fat turkey. So she would kill the turkey and dress it. She'd make the fruit cake out of the walnuts and the hickory nuts and the few pecans that we had there on the place. And we gathered those in starting about October, brought in all the walnuts off the walnut tree and the hickory nuts off the hickory nut tree and cracked them, and you got very few nuts off any of them, but we'd do real well if we got a half cup of nuts. Then Mother would put those into the fruit cake and make it out of the dried fruit that she'd put up to the year from the apple orchard and the peach orchard and the other fruits that we had. She put raisins in her fruit cake. And I didn't think it was very good. I never did like to eat it, but I liked to see it because it was pretty at Christmas. We got different things from Santa Claus from what you would get today because he had different ways of buying things then. The stores didn't carry the same things they carry today. But he always brought us fresh fruit, and we couldn't get that in the store. It came from Florida and California. And so to get a big orange in the stocking was special because they were not in the stores except maybe right at Christmas. But Santa Claus found oranges and beautiful red apples. And he brought nuts that we cracked, and he brought raisins in our stocking in a cluster of raisins. They were always on the vine still. They were not in a box. And then he brought hard candy that was usually stuck to the raisins and canned apples. And you wouldn't think it was very appetizing, but it was if you didn't have candy. But once or twice a year, that was really special. We'd pull it loose from the raisins and eat that. We always got a big, tall Roman candle poking out of the top of our stocking. And that was Daddy's favorite part. He couldn't wait to get outside and help us shoot the Roman candles. He'd take a shovel and shovel some of the coals out of the black iron stove that we had there to heat the house with. And he'd go out and holler, better come and help blow in Christmas. And we'd go out there and stick our Roman candles into the coals, get them lit and hold them up in our hands, and they'd shoot big, beautiful balls of blue and red and yellow in the sky. We hoped Grandmother and Papa could see them down at their house, but they probably were never up that time of morning. But Daddy would always hoop and holler and think we had done a good job to bring in Christmas. We had firecrackers always, and he helped shoot those, and he liked them so much that we liked them too. The year of that the World War II broke out was in 1942, and Daddy told us in advance that Santa Claus probably would not find fireworks that year because everything like that was being used for the war, and they were not selling fireworks on the stands, and probably Santa Claus wouldn't even have any. But when we got up that morning, he did. He had a Roman candle out each stocking and a few little fireworks, and that made it very special. In 1941, I got up and was so excited to see what Santa brought, but my jaws were puffed way out big, and I thought I couldn't open my mouth very well. I couldn't swallow much. And Mother said, well, you have mumps, and you can't go down to Grandmother's to the tree because all the cousins would be there and I would give them to other people. And I was disappointed, but she said I could go down and look in the window and see the Christmas tree and all the presents under it. And then I could bring what I got back up to the house and enjoy it that day. So it turned out to be a good Christmas for me. I went down and looked through the window and saw little baby cousins that had come from North Carolina. And Aunt Millie had brought her little girl, and I saw how pretty she was. And I saw the presents under the tree. And Daddy stayed at home with me and helped me carry the presents back up to our house. And I had a paint set from Uncle Leonard. And it had brushes and all colors of paint and a coloring book. And I sat there by the fire with Daddy that afternoon and thought I was kind of glad to just be up there having Christmas with Daddy. It was pretty nice. I had my candy to eat. I couldn't chew much with mumps, but I had the paint book and some other gifts that Grandmother had given me. But that was a Christmas I'll always remember because I didn't get to go take part in the Christmas tree with all the cousins, but it was still good.
How old were you that year?
I was 5.
Oh.
That was the last Christmas we lived up in the thicket. And the next January, Papa died, and we moved down to the house with Grandmother and lived in her house. And so that was the last year we had Christmas up in our little house in the thicket. And then we were down in the big house on the front of the farm, and all the cousins came for Christmas every year there. And I liked it. I don't remember being homesick for my other house because I liked the bigger house, and the place that we had was nice to be down there. One time there was a little girl that lived down in South Carolina, way down south with her mammy. Her daddy was gone. It was just the little girl and her mammy. And she watched her mammy work so hard every day, washing clothes for people and folding them and ironing them and getting them all ready to give back to the people for money to buy their food with. This little girl watched Mammy. She said, "Mammy, I wish I could help you. If I had a little washboard like yours, just my size, I could help you every day and you wouldn't have to work so hard. I think I'll just write Santa Claus a letter and ask him if he'll bring me a little washboard." And her mammy said, "No, honey, no, he won't come way down here to South Carolina, and he won't have any little washboards, but that's sweet, but it won't happen." But she didn't believe it. She wrote Santa Claus a letter, and she told him that she needed a little washboard to help her mammy do her work. And she said, "Please bring Mammy some little red ruby earrings. She's wanted some all her life. And thank you very much, Santa." Well, Mrs. Santa was working around the house, and she saw the letters that came into Santa Claus, and she read that letter from the little girl, and she said, "This is the sweetest letter. This little girl didn't ask for anything for herself except something to help her mammy work. And she's asked for her mammy to have red ruby earrings. I'm going to go and fill this request right now." And she went and got a stocking, and she had the elves make the little washboard that would be just right for that little girl. And then she found the prettiest pair of red ruby earrings, and she put them in a little box right down in the middle of that stocking. Then she said they need a good Christmas dinner, so she got a brown paper sack and put cans of good vegetables and all the things it would take to make a big pie, and had celery and meat and everything in there for a good Christmas dinner. And she said, "Now, Santa, I have this all fixed up, and don't forget to take it to that little girl." And he said, "All right, Miss Santa, I will." But the week of Christmas, just before he was ready to make his big trip, Dasher fell on the ice and hurt his leg so badly. Sprained his leg and he couldn't walk. And Santa said, "Oh, Dasher, I'm so sorry, but you're not going to be able to make the trip this year. You're going to have to stay at home." He wrapped his leg all up with white cloth and gave him some medicine and told him he was sorry to leave him, but he took the other 7 reindeer and hurried away on his journey. He didn't want to be late. But by hurrying, he forgot that little girl's washboard and her sack of good food, and he was too far away when he realized that he'd already forgotten it. But Miss Santa was looking around, and she said, "Oh no, here's that sack of the little girl's things in her stocking with her mammy's red ruby earrings. I have to get it to her. I can do this." She went out to the stable, and she said, "Dasher, will you be able to go with me to little girl's house in South Carolina?" And he pawed his foot 3 times, and that meant, "Yes, I'm able." So she hooked him up to his sleigh, and she got in that little red sleigh with the big sack of food for the little girl and her stocking, and she headed down to Boy and Girl Land, way down into South Carolina. It took a long time, and she wasn't sure how to get in the house. She couldn't go down the chimney. She wasn't used to crawling on a roof. So she tried the door, and sure enough, it was open. And she just walked right in, hung that stocking on the hearth, put the sack of groceries right down under it, and hurried back to Dasha, got in the sleigh, and away she went back to the North Pole. Just as she was getting there and taking off her wet boots and putting her coat in the closet, Santa Claus drove up. And he said, "Oh, Miss Santa, I've done the worst thing in the world. I forgot the little girl in South Carolina." And she said, "Don't you worry one bit, Santa. Dasha and I took care of it. We took her everything, and it worked out just fine." And he was so happy. The next morning, that little girl got up, and she looked in the living room, and there on the mantel was her stocking just chugged full of good things. She hurried in there, and there was the little washboard sticking out the top, silver and shiny. She was so happy. When she felt down in there, there was the box that she knew what it would be. She handed it to Mammy, and Mammy opened it and exclaimed, "Oh, I've always wanted red ruby earrings. Look what I have." They were the happiest that day. They had the biggest Christmas dinner, and they agreed this must be the best Christmas of all time. This is a poem that my mother used to say to us on Christmas Eve night when we had a little program. It's called Just for Christmas. It's written by Eugene Fields. Father calls me William. Sister calls me Will. Mother calls me Willie, but the fellers call me Bill. Mighty glad I ain't a girl. I'd rather be a boy without them sashes, curls, and things that's worn by Fauntleroy. I love to chomp green apples and go swimming in the lake. I hate to take the castor oil they give for bellyache. Most all the time, the whole year round, there ain't no flies on me. But just for Christmas, I'm as good as I can be. Got a yellow dog named Sport. I sick him on the cat. First thing she knows, she don't know where she's at. I got a clipper sled, and when us kids goes out to slide, along comes the grocery cart, and we all hook a ride. But sometimes the groceryman is worried and cross. He reaches at us with his whip and laps with his house. Then I laugh and holler, "Oh, you never touch me." But just for Christmas, I'm as good as I can be. Grandma says she hopes that when I get to be a man, I'll be a missionary like her oldest brother Dan, that was ate up by the cannibals that lived in Singland's Isle, where every prospect pleases and only man is vile. But Grandma, she's never been to see a Wild West show or read the life of Daniel Boone, or else I guess she'd know that Buffalo Bill and cowboys is good enough for me, except just for Christmas, when I'm good as I can be. The old Sport, he hangs around so solemn-like and still, his eyes keep saying, "What's the matter, little Bill?" The old cat sneaks down off her perch and wonders what's become of them two enemies of hern that used to make things run. But I'm so polite and tend so earnestly to biz that Mother says to Father how improved our Willie is. But Father, having been a boy himself, suspicions me when just for Christmas I'm as good as I can be. For Christmas, with its lots and lots of candies, cakes, and toys, was made, they say, for proper boys, kids, and not for naughty boys. So wash your face and brush your hair and mind your P's and Q's, and don't bust out your pantaloons and don't wear out your shoes. Say yes'm to the ladies and yes sir to the men, and when there's company, don't pass your plate for pie again. But thinking of all the things you'd like to see up on that tree, just for Christmas, be as good as you can be.